You're watching Drake Wing Gaming. Enjoy the video. Hey guys and gals, Nary here from Drake Wing Gaming. Somebody to me on Twitter, The Gaming Drag. Today I'm coming back at you another Let's Play episode of Lyre. It's Lyre. It's Lyre. There we go. Okay. But yes, the new build is out. Chapter 10 is up, and Chapter 10 Part 1, that is. We have to wait for Part 2, but we're not even in Chapter 1 first, so we've got some content to get through. I mean, Part 1. I'm just eager to get to it. But anyway, guys, please sit back and enjoy for the next 18 minutes. We'll entertain you. Let's jump right in. Alarm Chin, you are up, and let's friggin' go. Let's uncover this mystery, shall we? Oh, 1 second. Timer. There we go. Okay. Alarm Chin has been properly outfitted now. Okay. Before I know it, I'm fast asleep. Yet my eyes haven't felt like they've been closed in a long time. They still don't. Chapter 10, Day 28. Winter's harsh retribution on summer grows more relentless with each passing day. Oh yeah. A little bit. There we go. Okay. Flakes of snow gently fall down from the sky above, landing on Lyall's dark brown fur. The ground beneath his feet is frigid, but after being outside all morning, he's gotten used to it. Most of the people in these parts are used to it. Even the plants are barely affected by the frozen shower of Furry. He weakly kicks at the small pile of snow, watching it toss up into the air before landing on the ground ahead of him. Taking these walks helps him think, and being out here is better than being in the castle. For the past few years, he's been trying to do everything. For the past few days, he's been trying to do everything that he can to help Leuven. He hasn't been very successful, though. The only contact that he's been able to make with him is through a couple of small letters. He's not allowed to write anything important on them. Nothing helpful, at least. So they usually just end up being notes with words of encouragement or promises. Wouldn't matter anyway, given the fact that Leuven can't send anything back. I'll stop sending them after a while anyway. The fact that they need to be read by others is a breach of his privacy he'd rather not go through. As he slowly walks down the path, his eyes drift in the direction of the small pond underneath the dragon apricot tree. It was only a few weeks ago that when he and Leuven were sitting under that tree. The memory of that day always brings a smile to his face. He'd never be able to be so open with someone like that before. Without it blowing up in his face, at least. He was scared, but no matter how nervous he was, he felt comfortable. It was such a happy moment. Now it leaves a bittersweet taste in his mouth. Lyall's paws brush against the stiff grass underneath the snow as he walks toward the pond. The idea of showing this to Leuven fills him with a little bit of joy. Oh, bless me, goodness. Winter in Lyre is nothing like winter in Erin, from what he's heard. In Erin, it rarely snows, and if it does, most of the plants, such as flowers and things like that, need to be kept warm or they'll die. But here in Lyre, all of the plants have adapted to the climate. Sure, they lose a bit of their color and become stiff, but other than that, they're usually fine. It really creates a beautiful winter. Lyall stops by the tree stump at the edge of the pond and sits down, moving his cape so that he doesn't tug on it while sitting. His tail brushes against the snow and it sends a chill throughout his body, but it's a chill that feels nice. His trousers are thick enough that his rear isn't immediately shocked by the cold surface of the stump. Even then, his fur does an excellent job at keeping him from being too cold. Once he's relaxed, he leans forward with his paws clasped together in his lap, looking down at the water's frozen surface. He reminisces on that bittersweet memory once more, thinking about when Leuven picked off pieces of the rest of his apricot and tossed them into the pond. Small fish would swarm the pieces, pushing them around the water's surface, creating ripples across the whole pond. Leuven was being very quiet. Lyall had already finished all of his fruit, so he sat there watching Leuven, wondering if the prior conversation really went as well as he thought it did. Now the small body of water is completely frozen. Lyall picks up one of the apricots and examines it. It's rock solid and covered in frost. He takes off one of his gloves and holds the pink fruit in his paw. The cold skin brushes up against his paw pads and sends a shiver up his arm. He then looks down at the palm of his paw and stares at it with a melancholy look. The pads on his paw are dark and rough, with large claws coming out from the tips of his fingers. The rest is covered in fur. Compared to the soft skin and long articulate fingers on Leuven's hand, they're very much different. He chuckles to himself. No matter what he thinks about, his thoughts always lead back to Leuven. It can't be helped. Whether he's thinking about how awful their situation is, or how much he cares for him, Leuven's always on his mind. He looks back down at his paw again. A human and a wolf. Even in Erin, something like that must be rare. But in Lyre? Lyall can't think of any time he's heard of something like that happening. Similar things would have happened before, but usually there's at least something akin between the two partners. Lyall loves him very much, but even he has to admit there's a bit of a gap between the two of them biologically. Before he can continue to delve deeper into his thoughts, his ears perk up as he hears boots crunching through the snow. He lifts his head and turns in the direction of the noise. Elizabeth approaches from the path just outside the entrance into the castle. She stares at him for a moment before continuing toward the pond. Her footwear crunched through the snow with a deep, gritty noise. She's in her usual robes and doesn't look too cold, aside from the pale skin on her face turning red at the nose and cheeks. The only thing different about her is a pair of wool mittens. It's surprising that she even has the time to come out here. The investigation is still going on, and she rarely gets a moment to get away from it all. Lyall, on the other hand, isn't allowed near the investigation as much as he'd like. The only reason he's even able to be a part of it is because he's a high-ranking individual and technically a witness. Not only that, but despite the restrictions Adrius has put on him, Lyall's power of the Royal Guard is still as strong as ever. When it comes to anything other than Leuven, of course. So despite Adrius and his wishes, Lyall needs to be there to lead the Royal Guard in their inspection. Liz steps off the small path and approaches the pond. I thought you might be out here. Her voice travels across the pond like a hawk taking a sharp dive. Were you looking for me? Even when walking through a layer of snow, her figure is as straight and balanced as it always is. When she gets closer, Lyall can't help but chuckle as his head at the reality that only when he's sitting down are they at eye level. No, I just assumed I would come across you. It's not often that I come at her to think, especially with the weather. But I do stroll through here sometimes. She looks down at the stump he's sitting on and smirks. But I see my thinking spot has already been taken. Lyall blushes slightly and jumps up from his seat. By all means, here. It was only a joke. No, I insist. You've been working hard lately. You should be resting. Not out here in the cold. She stands there for a moment, looking up at him with a smile that spoke plenty of words, before sitting down. Sometimes you are too kind. Well, as long as nobody mistakes it for weakness. Of course. Lyall walks over to the tree and stands by the trunk, leaning his back against the cold surface. Liz sits there quietly for only a moment, most likely gathering her thoughts before speaking again. Lyall? Yes? I know it's not like we haven't seen each other in a while, but I just now realized that I've never properly asked. How have you been taking all this? He scuffs his paw at the ground, looking down and avoiding her eye contact. I've been taking it as well as I can, I suppose. He brings back his paw and kicks one of the fruit, watching it skate across the surface of the pond before slowly coming to a stop near the bank on the other side. I know Rainer was like family to you, and I can certainly confirm without a doubt that he adored you. For some reason, Lyall can't help but think about the depressing funeral that was held only a couple days after Rainer's murder. It was a private gathering that only those closest to him were allowed to attend. The burial was held at twilight in the gardens where Elena was also laid to rest. It was a sad day, and not a single person spoke. Instead, everyone just stood there quietly, mourning. Adrius said a few words, but other than that, he just silently sat in front of the grave, gently placing small flowers around both headstones. Adrius said okay. Lyall wanted to... God, my foot is asleep. God, it feels so weird. Pens and needles. Lyall wanted to stay, but when everyone started to depart and Adrius made no move to get up, Lyall knew he too should probably go. I wish none of this happened. I know. We all do. This whole tragedy might just plunge this kingdom into war. Lyall shivers at the idea of war breaking out. I'm sure that another solution will present itself. She continues to look at the ground, her eyes shrouded in gloom. Both of them sit there in silence for some time before she speaks up. I spoke with Lord Leuven the other day. I couldn't remember if I had told you or not. Lyall straightens up after hearing this. No, you didn't. How's he doing? Not as bad as one would think, but still. He's not doing too great. Just then, Lyall's chest feels like a twist into a knot. He leans against the tree, sliding down the trunk and slumping against it, seating himself onto the cold snow beneath him. Nothing comes to mind that he could say. His thoughts completely clouded. Elizabeth's concerned voice breaks him out of his daze. Are you okay? I'm sorry if that bothered you. Even in the midst of his swirling thoughts, Lyall musters up the energy to give a polite response. No, it's fine. You're only answering my hasty questions. She relaxes a bit and places her hands on her lap.
I know you have a strong devotion to him, but the rumors won't do it justice. They're a bit of an understatement, actually.
Oh yeah, the rumors.
Just a bunch of fools who talk about it as if there's nothing better to do. Everyone talks about it, as you probably know.
I know firsthand. I wish people would just mind their own damn business.
Trust me, so do I. It would make everything a lot easier. I just want you to know that I'm not judging you.
I know.
I was, however, shocked with that display during the party.
Lyall slumps more into the tree, his face being surrounded by the fluff around his neck. Yeah.
Don't get the wrong idea. It's not in the way you think. After the initial shock, I was actually quite interested.
Really?
Yes. The amount of courage it must have taken for all that.
Trust me, it wasn't as courageous as you think.
Still, it was impressive. Especially Leuven's part in it. The way he told off all those pompous halfwits from the higher houses. God, the look on their faces was priceless. They really hated that.
Yeah, it was great.
The interesting part about it was Leuven's reaction. No normal person in his position would dare to do something like that. Compared to that day he stumbled into the chambers with his thoughts scattered and manners thrown out the window, I'd say it was an improvement, but still. He's so different from every other ambassador I've come across. Like that one from Driss. He's strange, but there's no doubt he was politically trained. Unlike Leuven, who...
Are you saying Leuven isn't good at his job?
No, not at all. I like the fact that he's so different from the others. Besides, I haven't known him long enough to be able to make such a judgment.
Lyall looks down, embarrassed at his rushed attempt at defending Leuven. Sorry, I misunderstood. He hasn't had the chance to do much yet, but everything that he's done so far has been done exceptionally. Mostly dealing with the Crown's money, making sure Raynor didn't run the kingdom dry with another one of his extravagant parties.
Someone had to.
She looks down with a smile on her face, but it quickly fades once the levity of the conversation dissipates.
I've gotten off track, though. I know that you're a good man. When you were a young lad, you always strove to do what's right, even if it wasn't in your best interest.
But...
She lets out a sigh. But sometimes you think you're in over your head.
There it is. 1 second, guys.
Lyall lets out a short exhale through his nose, causing a puff of cold breath to appear in front of it. I want to trust you on this, really, I do. But there's not much for me to go off other than your word.
Lyall seems to sink further into his armor. It's as if he'll disappear into himself at any given moment.
Do you have any evidence that can help clear his name? Anything to bring to the trial?
Of course, but I don't think it'll be enough.
Anything you haven't told us yet that could be useful?
Everything I know has been laid out for all to hear, along with all the evidence everyone's been looking at for the past week. It's almost as if they're trying to make it seem like they haven't already made their decision. She places her hands on her lap, looking down at them with a thoughtful face.
I know you have these feelings for him, and I'm happy for you, but you're risking a lot right now. More than you could possibly imagine.
She brushes the snow off of her legs and stands up, looking him in the eye. He looks up at her and sits up straight, realizing she's leaving.
You're going to find yourself at a crossroads soon. We all are. The question is, will you risk it all, or will you abandon everything?
Lyall clumsily stands up with a confused look on his face. What?
It's just something to think about. Something I've been thinking about for a long time. Not the warmest note to end on, but I assure you, giving it some thought will prove useful.
She brings her hands behind her back and gives a nod.
It's about time I went back inside back inside the warm walls of the castle.
Of course.
Listen, Lyall.
His ears perk up as she continues.
I've put my trust in you. But whatever happens, I want you to know. I just want what's best for this kingdom. And I'm sorry for anything that happens.
Lyall's attempt at coming up with any response to what she said slowly dissipates as she walks away towards the entrance to the courtyard. One of the castle guards comes out the door, safely ushering her into the hall. Lyall looks up into the air, snowflakes falling down gracefully like stars against a foggy blue sky. What she said doesn't feel so reassuring, though. If anything, it just makes the rest of this week feel like it's going by faster. Everything seems to be slowly creeping up on them with every passing day. This feeling of dread would be enough to make anyone crumble. That on top of the constant thought of Leuven sitting alone in that cell, slowly losing all hope. Lyall looks down at his paw, the glove still firmly grasped in it. The little claws at each fingertip jingle and clank into each other as he grips it tighter. I swear, I'll... He releases his grip, sliding the glove back onto his paw. I'll get you out of there, no matter what. I'll prove it to them. He says this while looking at the ground, as if he was talking in the direction of Leuven down in their cell. There's one thing that he could do, though. But he needs to go to the court chambers and look over the evidence. A certain someone might be able to help identify something. This might be his only chance to get information that nobody else could. He quickly stands up and begins to walk away from the pond. He's done enough thinking. It's time to take action. With each twist and turn through the castle halls, Lyall's heart beats faster, his body filled with anxiousness and hope. Contrary to his large size, his feet are silent and quick as he swiftly makes his way down the corridor. The court chambers are just up ahead. The room is heavily guarded, along with Leuven's quarters and Rainer's bedchambers. Nobody except for people participating in the investigation have been allowed in Leuven's room since the solstice. They did a complete search of the room, finding nothing but expensive clothes and a cluttered desk full of notes and documents, along with a few embarrassing drawings Lyall had made that he kept. Thankfully, the guards won't stop him. He may not be able to visit with Leuven, but they can't bar him off from this. As he approaches the door, there's a few castle guards standing outside. They stand up straight and look forward. Lyall walks up to the door and takes out his keys, unlocking it with a large clanking sound. He opens the door and leans in through the threshold. It's empty. The candles on the chandelier above the table are lit. The curtains are drawn and the room is lifeless. The room shouldn't be this empty. He pauses for a moment, wondering if something is wrong, but then walks into the room with caution, closing the door behind him. The table went from being a place for guests to eat to being cluttered with papers, documents, and all sorts of evidence important to the investigation. The chairs are pushed out and facing all kinds of directions. Rainer's clothes from that night are laying flat on the table, completely spread out, appearing to have been examined multiple times. The dried blood on the suit sends a cold rush up Lyall's body, but he looks away from it now. That's not what he came here for. Along with the suit are pieces of the ripped drapes which have been collected and laid out next to it. Letters, documents, more letters. The table would look like an absolute mess to anyone who didn't know their way around it. Lyall spots the thing he's looking for, but not before his eyes glance across some of the sketches he's made. Liz knew of the Lyall's hobby and asked him to sketch out the scene before they removed any of the evidence. It was nearly in the morning and none of them had slept, so his drawings didn't come out that great. On top of the fact that he wasn't enjoying a single moment of it, the things he was asked to sketch that night were uncomfortable. It had to be done, and it helped, so... Thankfully, whoever was looking at them last decided to cover them up with a sketch of the scene from the entrance. Not pleasant, but much less detailed. A shocking sight he'd rather not remember. With a nasty twist forming in his stomach, he sets the sketches back on the table and looks down at the murder weapon. It's a unique yet simple rondel dagger with a long blade. It's nothing too classy, but certainly not cheap. A pretty thing for a peasant to spend their life savings on, but nothing a noble would use. The guard is made from gold, but it feels very light. The dagger doesn't look like it's been used much either. There's a clean finish aside from the blood that's been left on it. Alright guys and gals, I'm gonna pause it right here. Thank you all so much for watching. It's nice to have Lyre back. Ooh, can't wait for more. Anyway, y'all, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Leave a super thanks or a tip if you can, it always helps. Until the next video, I love you all. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!